Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. What are some truly scary experiences that have happened to you? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. A few years back, a few members of our dance group at school, were searching for some construction fences that we needed for a parody of Chicago. We discovered a semi-abandoned industrial place, the name of which I cannot recall. English isn't my first language, and found a bunch of fences we needed. They were all standing up against a wall and tied to each other in the middle. We got the 3 fences that we wanted and were ready to tie the remaining 22 fences up again. We were with 4 girls, including myself, so we did the following. 2 girls held the remaining fences. The other girl would tie them up. Then I held the tree fences we needed. Behind me lies a huge pile of bricks. One of the girls who was holding the fences accidentally let one slip, and before she realized what she did, the girl who did the tying work and I were lying under 22 fences. At that moment, everyone started panicking. I landed on the pile of bricks, and I feel a lot of pressure on my ribs and knees. I also realize that if I don't get away as fast as possible, my kneecaps might possibly snap because of the pressure. I feel so much fear at this moment and look up, only to look in the eyes of my terrified classmate who is looking straight at me. She's in shock. The girls who were holding the fences are both crying about the fact that they can't lift the fences back up and that they're sorry. They're both also scared to death. All of a sudden, I feel a serene calmness flowing through my body. All the screaming and crying fades away, and I'm completely focused on the music that is entering my ear through the earplug I still wear. Tool, the Patient, is playing, and all I can hear is the sentence, "Must keep reminding myself of this." I start talking in a very calm voice, explaining that if the fences don't come off quickly, I might break both of my knees. I keep talking in a calm voice to calm everybody down. I looked at both girls and said something about lifting the fences up, one by one. It works. The girl who appeared to be in shock got away first. Thereafter, it was my turn. With a loud bang, all the fences full-on pile of bricks I was lying on first. I start laughing like a fucking imbecile, happy I'm still alive, and my knees are okay. Right after that, I collapse and I'm in a lot of pain. It appeared my ribs were heavily bruised, and I only mentioned it then because of the laughing. Blah blah blah. We went to a hospital. Everyone did fine. I couldn't dance anymore, and my ribs healed eventually. One late fall afternoon while working in the oil patch, it was starting to get dark. We were finishing up a 12-hour shift when we passed by a clearing in the woods. In the clearing stood a moose. Moose are rather big animals, but generally do not charge, and at the distance we were, my group was not really afraid. Partly out of tiredness and partly out of awe, we stood there as a group of 5 men watching this moose. One of my co-workers pulled out a camera to capture the moose on film. Yes, film. This was in 2000. It was then we heard a thunderous sound, and crashing from the bushes to the right of the clearing came a black bear. The moose, caught off guard, was promptly slammed to the ground. The moose staggered to get back up, but was brought down again in a raw display of force that made UFC look like 2 kittens going at it. We hauled ass out of there. If a moose couldn't get away, 5 unarmed men in safety vests wouldn't have had a chance. The bear didn't stalk us or come after us, but we called in a helicopter for a flyby anyhow, and finished up the last half kilometer to the pickup point faster than we'd worked all day. Nowhere near as scary as some of the posts in here, but here's mine. Aged about 14, a friend and I would regularly spend Friday night exploring the hills and valleys around the house. We live in a valley, so there are mountains surrounding the town. Anyway, it must have been around 1 to 2 a.m., and we just climbed over a fence into a field when we suddenly saw the outline of some kind of animal trotting toward us. Thinking it was a sheep that had come too far down the mountain, we carried on until we noticed that it arched its back and sat down the same way a cat would. Sheep don't sit down like that, so what we saw was definitely more feline. I should emphasize that it was pitch black, and we could only make this thing out by an even darker outline against the grass and the shrubs. We looked at it for a moment, then it turned its head and looked directly at us. We turned around and ran away and never went back to that part of the hillside again. A few years later, I told my father about this. I still believe we saw something, and I'm not superstitious or have any belief in the supernatural, and he told me that as he was driving out of town one day, the main route that ran a half a mile from the start of the hill where we saw the thing, he said he had to brake his car suddenly because he saw a large black animal trot across the road up the motorway and into the bushes at the opposite end of the valley. It moved too fast and was too dark for him to see exactly what it was, but he told me it was definitely real. I have one. I was 17 and with my brother in Baltimore, Maryland. We live 50 miles south, which is in the country, so we're not used to city life. Anyways, being already scared as it was for being that young in the ghetto, we went and saw a show at the original Hammerjacks before they tore it down, and had an otherwise great time. I think we saw White Zombie. Great show, by the way. They blew the doors off the place. On the way home, we had to drive through Martin Luther King Boulevard, and as Chris Rock stated in one of his routines, if you're on MLK Boulevard anywhere in the world, your ass is in danger. And we were a little sketched out. I pulled onto Route 295 and decided to get some gas before we left city limits. I pull into one station, and they tell me they're closed, although all the lights are blaring and the sign says open. The guy looked really scared though, the attendant. So, right next door was another station that I pulled into. I got out, walked up to the window outside, and walked up behind the rough-looking black dude with a red stocking cap, and I noticed he was yelling, hurry up, at the attendant inside. Well, I glanced over his shoulder a bit, and the guy is pointing a gun at the window robbing the place. Thankfully, he never even knew I walked up behind him. I quietly and rapidly turned around, walked back to my car, got in, and drove off. My brother was like, what's wrong? And I proceeded to tell him everything. He said, punch it, let's get the out of here, I'm never coming back to Baltimore. Not creepy, but a narrow miss, as the OP asked. One time on a long road trip to Maryland from Canada, we were driving through a bit of West Virginia. It was some backcountry-ass roads with no streetlights, and it was like 4 a.m. I was casually having a conversation with my friends in the car, making jokes like, yeah, these are the kinds of back roads where murderers and serial killers block the road with large cars and force you to come to a stop, then run up to your car and argue and kill you and hide your body. As I was saying this, we banked a corner, and the headlights picked up a bright red road sign, which I immediately mistook for some sort of barricade. Suffice to say, the entire car of grown men squealed like little girls, and there was a brief moment of genuine fear on our parts. My elementary school 5th grade field trip was to Philadelphia Valley Forge, as we were learning about the Revolutionary War. We flew cross-country and arrived at night bus on a dark, stormy night, snowing pretty well. I had 3 roommates in the dorm. We stayed in MacArthur Hall, which was built on the grounds of Washington's ill-fated winter. The caretaker there would tell us that people could still find musket balls with teeth marks in them now and then. Lights out, and I'm trying to get to sleep, but I start to get that horrible feeling that I'm being watched or something just isn't right. I slowly roll over, and outside our window was a man wearing a tricorn hat, cloak blowing in the wind. I can still replay the moment in my mind 25 years later, as though it had just happened. TL, DR. I saw a dead colonial soldier. My hometown is also home to a large state prison and state medical facility. One summer when I was 8, I attended day camp in a rural area not far from the outskirts of town. Some afternoon, 3 of the prisoners or patients from the medical facility, insane people convicted of crimes, broke out, somehow procured guns, hijacked a blue minivan, and drove it out of town. Highway patrol was on their trail, but they called the camp to let them know that there was a van full of crazies on the way to the camp, and to get the kids inside or whatever. Except, being a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds that were probably quite scared themselves, they all stated telling us different things to do if the people drove through our camp. The worst of which was, if they opened fire, we should lie down and pretend we'd already been shot. It was pretty upsetting. I remember seeing the van speed through the parking lot and into the woods, and shortly thereafter, they caught the guys.
Where I grew up, in Suffolk County, Long Island, there was this large place that was called the Long Island Developmental Center, and it had people with different learning and mental disabilities, etc. And I remember, now mind you, this is like the early mid-'80s, like before they closed it, now it's all beautiful $1 million homes. But when it was that facility, that was like a work camp sort of, guys would escape and just be walking down our street. I lived like 2 blocks from there in like a, medical gown, a hospital gown. And they'd just call and some guys in a white van would come pick them up and they go away. It was probably pretty dangerous, but we were just like, whatever, just on our bikes, casual. Pre-internet life was wild.
A year or so ago, I was visiting my mom for the summer, and at about 12 at night, I called my boyfriend. I'm on the porch to get a better signal since she lives out in the middle of nowhere, miles from civilization. Other than a few neighbors who are still pretty far away, nobody could hear me talking. Then I see something out of the corner of my eye. There was something white at the end of the driveway, the end closest to me, and since my contacts are pretty dry at that hour, I have to squint to see it in the moonlight, and I realize that it's a person wearing a white hoodie. I freak the fuck out, as this guy is standing about 20 yards from where I am, and could hear me talk clear as day. I can assume he figures out that I've spotted him as I stop talking, and I see him back up into the trees. I sit there for a moment longer before I dash back into the house and wake up my mom. The next morning I walked out there and found shoe prints in the sand. I took pictures of them, and my mom called the police. They came out, but they didn't even look at the footprints or seem to care at all. They said they'd add us to the nightly route or whatever. I don't think they ever did. I still never figured out who that person was. This is going to be on the long side. I must have been 12 or so, I'm guessing. 29 now, so a little hard to recall. My dad has always been kind of an intense guy. Occasionally, this got him into trouble. For some perspective, I remember one night when I was young and still occasionally sleeping in my parents' bed, my dad came home late one night and got into bed and was making these weird noises. Kind of sighing or moaning and half sniffling through what sounded like a stuffy nose. It was blood. It woke me up and I lay there for a while, scared, knowing something was wrong, but not sure what. I finally asked him what was going on, and he told me he got into a fight with 2 guys at a Taco Bell drive-thru. So on to the real story. One night I hear the phone ring, really late at night. Wakes me up. My dad starts speaking loudly into the phone and stuff, saying things like, "Oh yeah, motherfucker? Bring it on then, motherfucker. I'll be waiting." This goes on for minutes, and the language gets pretty profane. And it seems like forever. I'm freaking out in my bed, which is right across from my parents' room. Scared the shit out of me, and I never asked him about it. Soon it's decided that we need police protection, so a squad car sits out in front of our house for a night or 2. This is all kept rather quiet from me, and I guess I was too frightened to press my parents about it much further. Fast forward to another night, when Dad is not home. Mom and sister leave to go shopping, which leaves me, home alone. I do my normal 12-year-old thing, watch a lot of TV, probably eat bad food, etc. Bear in mind, we lived in a neighborhood where it was very common to leave doors unlocked all day pretty much. Then, I guess I just remember starting to feel super tired, but I thought nothing of it out of the ordinary, so I went to lay down in bed. Suddenly, I'm jarred awake by knocking at our kitchen door, actually super hard pounding. I opened my eyes but found it difficult, almost physically impossible, to make myself get up. I was in a total daze and probably very close to death. After a while, I managed to get myself out of bed because the pounding just would not stop. I stumbled to the door and it's my mom and sister. They had locked themselves out or forgotten their house keys or something. The first thing my sister says when she walks in is, "Why does it smell like gas in here? Did you forget to turn the gas off?" And she's kind of laughing at me, and I'm like, "Huh? I didn't cook anything on the stove." I remember feeling upset because they didn't believe me. I knew for a fact I didn't cook anything on the stove. They opened the windows, and I guess I fell asleep a little while later. And the incident was never brought up again, I don't think. I guess I don't know for sure if the two incidents are related, if whoever was on the other side of that late night call or the reason we needed police protection was behind that bizarre night when I was home alone. And I never put two and two together until quite some time after this incident, because like I said, much of the preceding stuff was kept quiet from me. But I'm pretty sure I was almost murdered, and to this day, I haven't worked up the courage to ask my dad about all that stuff that went down with the phone calls and police protection, etc. I have a heart tachyarrhythmia, and in January I had a really bad episode where I couldn't get my heart to stop racing and skipping. I ended up in the ER for it, hooked up to 15 different leads with no less than 5 medical professionals, maybe 6, working around me as if I'm struggling to breathe and my heart's going 240 beats per minute. They ended up stopping my heart 3 times in succession, and it was just out and out freaking weird. I remember thinking I might die, and being sad that my husband wasn't there, and that my friend was, and being satisfied that my last words to my husband would be, "I love you, have a good shift." I didn't want to die scared, so I was trying not to be, but it was terrifying, wrong feeling. I made it, obviously, but the feeling of one's heart stopping in and of itself was odd. Strangely, I want to experience it again. Those few moments were so clear, and I focused so intently on my body and trying to stay alive. It was the most cleanly me I can remember being in a long time, in a very private, very public kind of way. So I used to be an assistant manager at CD Trades Post. It's a buyback store for movies, music, and games. Well, I happened to be working at one that was on the edge of one of the ghettos of Wichita, Kansas. This one night, a junkie comes in, holds a gun up to me, and demands the money in the drawer. Well, as I was taught to do, I calmly put my hands up and told him to just relax while I opened the drawer. At this point, I'm scared shitless, and my veins are pumping with pure adrenaline. As I turn to the computer to open the drawer, the single most terrifying moment of my life occurs. I hear a click, and my mind for a split second is all, "That's it." But I see the clip eject from the gun, and the junkie looks shocked. At this point, pure adrenaline and instincts kick in, and I do something extremely stupid. I reach over the counter, grab the gun out of his hands, and point it directly at him, telling him to get the fuck out, and then call the cops. Later I found out the gun wasn't loaded, but as such, I was extremely lucky. I was longboarding. Think of a longer, faster skateboard around my neighborhood that I thought I knew. I'm going along up and down on some beautiful part of the area I'd never been to. If I'm going too fast, I just jump off, worst case. I steer to the curb and run off the board as it hits the curb. I've done this dozens of times. Not that good yet, but I know just enough to get myself into trouble. Sure enough, I get going down a slope. I don't want to jump off yet as I think it could be a nice up and down roller. Okay, now I'm going pretty well, but I think I can still get out of it. Well, I'm going too fast. And all of a sudden, there are cars lining both sides of the street. So no steering to the curb, as I'll eat bumper and glass, and no ditching on the asphalt, as I'll be chewed up by the asphalt when I stumble and bail as I try to jump off. I hesitate. Now I'm really... And I now am completely screwed if I steer into a car. There's no brakes. I don't have a helmet, as I was just going for an easy ride, and I've never gone this fast. Flashing back right now. And it gets worse. I got going on the slope, waiting to see the end, which was what got me into trouble. Maybe I can ride this out. I still can't see the end of the slope. It's curving, and maybe it goes back uphill, and I could just blow through some stop signs and jump off the crest of the next hill. Nope. This hill ends in a T intersection, and I'm headed into a dead end. With time slowing to a standstill, I see the bus stop at the dead end of the T. I'll need to miss that when I crash. I see there's a fence just past the curb. I'll need to try and bounce off of that. Wait, I see a patch of grass, like a landing strip off to the side, just past the end of the parked cars that were lining both sides of the Death Trap Road. I swallow and point my board at the curb and the grass strip, maybe 5 feet across, 30 feet long. I'm easily going 35 to 45 km/h when I hit the curb. I try and run with it, but I can't kick fast enough and I eat it. I go face first into the grass and javelin, head in the grass, feet straight up, stopping just short of the sidewalk. I made it. I'm alive. I pull my headphones out, and what's the first thing I do? Look if anyone saw what just happened. Not a soul. I then look up to see my board careening down the rest of the hill into the T intersection, where it slams into the curb, smashing it in two. And only seconds after the shards hit the ground, a handy bus passes through the intersection. I may have been run over or wily coyoted into that thing if I had kept going. Scariest moment of my life. I stopped longboarding shortly after this happened. Here's mine. I used to work at this plastic window production facility. I was on the sales team, but our offices were right on top of the plant itself. Now it needs to be said that this was all located in an industrial park with several other facilities nearby. The warehouse right next to us had recently changed owners, and a large amount of used paper had been stored there. Some sort of recycling project. So one autumn evening, I go down to the production floor to check up on the progress and suddenly notice this orange haze in the side window. I go out and realize that this warehouse is on fire. So I call the guys, those with cars nearby move them, and we just stand there mesmerized by the sight, only to realize that one of our old trailers is standing right next to this burning warehouse. So we went to pull it away, and as we were about 40 meters from the building, there was this loud boom, and a red-hot 2x2 meter piece of metal flew right over our heads and crashed on the ground in a shower of sparks. Someone had left a truck in there, and it exploded, sending part of the roof flying. 6 of us, not a scratch. Damn lucky. Although this doesn't frighten me now, and every time I go back home I try to catch it again, when I was younger this scared the crap out of me. I was maybe 10 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night to see a man standing in the doorway of my bedroom. He was dressed in what looked like some old army outfit. I was too young at the time to know what he was wearing, but I'll get to that in a minute. He just stood there looking at me for a few seconds, then began looking around the room. After a minute he walked away. I thought at first it was my father. I got up to see what he wanted, but when I looked out into the hallway, no one was there. I made my way to my parents' bedroom, where I found my father fast asleep. I didn't really think anything of it and went back to bed. About a week later, I told the story of what happened to a friend of mine. His grandfather, who was in the town historian, overheard and began telling me the story that my house was used as a Union hospital during the Civil War. About 15 years before my family moved into the house, a psychic was called in because various previous occupants noticed the same thing. The psychic said there was a spirit in the house of a Union soldier, which explained the odd attire. He was informed that his brother was in the hospital and was trying to find him, but the soldier died of wounds he sustained in battle before he was able to locate his brother. His spirit still haunts my old home, trying to find his brother. However, I've yet to discover the fate of his brother. When I was 16, I was at a conservation area in Ontario that my family owned a trailer at. We had gone there to do work and clean up some shit, but I was lazy and told him I was going on a walk. Well, behind one of the trails were some farms or dirt roads that I had been at once or twice before. So I just walked down this one dirt road for quite a while, listening to music. Also had my shirt off because it was really hot. but eventually I just got bored because it was just a long stretch of straight road, and I'd already been gone a couple hours at this point. So I turned around and started walking back. After a little while of walking back, I see a pickup ahead driving in the opposite direction. As we pass, I look back and see him turning around. This guy drives up beside me and starts asking me where I'm going and if I needed a ride. I told him where I was going, but refused the ride for about 5 times. He just gave up after a while and drove away, in the same direction I was heading. He might not have been out to get me considering I'm male, but who knows? It really creeps me out that he turned around to do that, and more, that he kept going the opposite way of where he was originally going when I refused. When I was a student, I finished a bar shift one evening and there was a sudden bus strike in London. The only money I had on me was what I needed to eat that week. I had no money for a taxi or tube and thought I'd just walk home. I lived near a landmark that you could see from miles away. I knew how to get from landmark home easily enough, but didn't know a route from where I was to the landmark, so I winged it. My experimental path took me into a nice-looking estate near the banks of the Thames River, but also to a dead end. I had to backpack, and I'm doing so. I caught the attention of a tall black man in a purple trade suit walking along the path by the side of the river. I'm a big guy, though, so I wasn't unduly alarmed. Anyway, as I was walking along the road, still in a nice-looking but very quiet, business-oriented part of town, I noticed that the guy was behind me. He doesn't do a courtesy cross at the street or slow down. He's matching my speed and keeping a constant distance. At one point, I notice a security guard in a lobby of a glass-fronted building and step into the shelter of its facade whilst preparing to make a phone call. The black guy passes by and turns left and out of sight further down the street. I give it a few moments and resume walking along the street. I look behind me further along just to keep situational awareness, and he's back again. He had walked up that street only so that he could wait for me to pass by and start following me again. Now fully alarmed, I accelerate my pace as we encounter a steep curved incline. As soon as I know that I'm out of his line of sight, I sprint up the rest of the hill. I would have kept running, but a taxi was passing, and I hailed it and jumped in. I figured I would be better off spending my food budget on getting out of there and eating oatmeal for a few days, rather than staying in that situation. The driver needed to take a route that involved doubling back the way I came, so I scrunched down in the back seat. We'd passed the person who'd been following me, and I remember his puzzled face as he scanned the streets, trying to figure out how I was nowhere to be seen.